All right, let's talk about one of mythology's biggest stars, the siren. But what if I told you that pretty much everything you think you know about her is, well, wrong? Yeah, let's get into her real story.
Okay, do me a favor. When I say the word siren, what's the first thing that pops into your head? It's probably a gorgeous mermaid, right? Sitting on a rock, singing, luring sailors to a watery grave. Sound about right? Well, you're not alone. But here's the kicker. For over 1,000 years, you would have been totally, completely wrong. Seriously, that image wouldn't have made any sense to the ancient Greeks. The original siren was something else entirely. So, let's start with the siren we all know. She's this beautiful, deadly seductress of the sea, the one we see in movies and books, this perfect symbol of dangerous beauty whose voice promises everything, but only leads to disaster.
Okay, so that's the popular version. But now let's rewind the clock, way back. It's time to meet the original bird woman. Yep, you heard me. The classical siren of ancient Greece wasn't a sea creature at all. She was a creature of the air.
No, seriously, I'm not kidding. For hundreds and hundreds of years, starting way back in the 7th century BC, every time you saw a siren in Greek art, she was a hybrid creature, a woman's head on a bird's body. Wild, right? I mean, just look at the difference here. It's absolutely staggering. You've got the classical siren, a bird woman, who lives in a meadow, sings about ultimate knowledge, and is all tied up with death and the afterlife. Then, bam. Over 1,000 years later, she's a mermaid who lives in the sea, sings about earthly pleasure, and is all about temptation. So the big question is, how on earth did that happen? Yet before she was some kind of sea-bound femme fatale, her job description was completely different. In some stories, she was a companion to Persephone and was given wings to go look for her after she was kidnapped. In others, she was this incredible singer who's so full of herself, she actually challenged the muses to a singing contest. Spoilers, she lost, and they plucked her feathers. Ouch. But her most important role? She was a psychopomp, a fancy word for a guide who led souls into the afterlife. That's why you see her on so many ancient funerary statues. Okay, so bird or fish, one thing never changed. The siren's power was always in her song. But what was that original song really about? It's probably not what you think. So the most famous story about this, of course, is from Homer's Odyssey. You've got the hero Odysseus, who was just consumed by this need to know things. He had to hear that song. So he comes up with his crazy plan. He tells his crew to plug their ears with beeswax and tie him to the mast of the ship no matter what. But just think about that for a second. What kind of song is so powerful, so irresistible, that you'd risk everything just to hear it? It wasn't about love or pleasure. It was something deeper. And this is what they sang to him. They said, "We know all the pains that the Greeks and Trojans once endured. All that comes to pass on the fertile earth, we know it all." Basically, they were offering him the ultimate prize, omniscience. They promised him the knowledge of everything that ever was and everything that ever will be.
So you see, their appeal wasn't to the flesh, it was to the mind. They were what's called mantic creatures, kind of like the Sphinx, offering up these divine, cosmic truths. But there was a catch, a big one. The price was your life. And it wasn't even a quick death, like crashing on the rocks. Nope. The legend says you'd be so mesmerized by their song that you'd just stop. You'd sit down, listen, and forget to eat or drink until you literally wasted away.
All right, which brings us back to the million-dollar question. How did this feathered brainiac, this guide to the afterlife, morph into the fish-tailed temptress we all picture today? Well, it didn't happen overnight. It was actually a really slow burn. For starters, Homer never actually says what they look like in the Odyssey. But for the next 1,000 years or so, Greek art is super consistent. They're bird women. The first big change we see in writing is in the 8th century AD, in a book, get this, called the Liber Monstrorum, or Book of Monsters. It straight up describes them as having scaly fishes' tails. After that, the idea just snowballed. Medieval bestiaries, encyclopedias of beasts, ran with the mermaid image. And by the 12th century, the poor old bird woman was basically ancient history. So, why the total rebranding? It really boils down to 3 big things. First, Christian allegory. As Christianity became dominant in Europe, old pagan myths got a makeover to serve as moral lessons. And what better symbol for the dangers of lust, vanity, and worldly temptation than a beautiful half-woman? Second, those bestiaries I mentioned. They were super influential, and they started lumping sirens in with other sea creatures, drawing them as mermaids. And third, they got new accessories. The mermaid siren was almost always shown holding a comb and a mirror, the ultimate symbols of vanity. And just like that, her identity was sealed. She was no longer about knowledge. She was about seduction. But here's the really fascinating part. Even though she went from feathers to fins and her bait switched from knowledge to temptation, the fundamental thing about the siren, that never changed. I mean, just think about the phrase we still use today, a siren song. What does it mean? It means an appeal that is so hard to resist, but if you give in, it's going to end badly. It's the exact same core idea. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if she was offering you all the secrets of the universe or just a good time. The siren has always represented one thing, a fatal distraction, a call so powerful that it makes you completely lose track of where you're going, what you're supposed to be doing, maybe even who you are. Her body changed, yeah, but her power, that song you just can't resist, that endured. And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The ancient Greeks, they were afraid of the pull of forbidden knowledge. The medieval world was terrified of worldly temptation. So what about us, in our world, right now? What's the siren song that's hardest to resist?